Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. I'm back after a trip to Virginia Tech, where I had the honor of speaking to a packed crowd of students there as part of Turning Point's ongoing campus tour. I was supposed to be there with Charlie, and his absence was felt acutely. It was one of those things like after he was killed, I had no idea whether they would go forward with the campus tour. I assumed that they wouldn't. And when Erica announced 48 hours after Charlie died that they were not stopping one thing, I stood up and cheered. I hadn't even considered that they would keep it rolling. And I was so inspired by her. And of course, there was no hesitation to go forward with it. But I said to the students there last night, it was an act of courage of them to show up, because these are kids on campus who are young. And unfortunately, that's where this violence took place, on a college campus. And there are too many people that age who are turning dangerous these days. And so for them to show up in an environment where they know it's politically charged and where someone was assassinated 2 weeks beforehand at an event that has his organization's name on it, and that this one did too, is an act of courage by these students. And yet, can I show you? Let me show you the line. I'm just going to show you the line to get in. Let's roll the tape. The listening audience, it goes on and on and on. I mean, just like it's endless. There were definitely thousands of people there last night. I don't know what the total head count was, but the auditorium was jam-packed. It was standing room only. I went and I got to spend time with Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia beforehand, behind the scenes. What a charming man. What a great guy. God, he's got a very bright political future if he ever wants to seek national office. He's going to have to go after JD. But after that, he would be amazing. He led us here backstage in prayer before we went out. And his words really meant something to me. They actually made me feel a lot better. Anyway, thank you to all the students who were there. We'll get to what happened while I was there in a minute, but thank you to all those who showed up. You know, they said at Charlie's funeral that Charlie used to say, courage is actually easy. All you have to do is say yes. Just say yes, and then do the thing. And that's what they did. So I'm honored that they turned out. I'm honored that Turning Point went forward with it and wanted me to appear. And I spoke with Erica about it via text, and she wanted me to tell them how proud she was of them and how Turning Point will have their back. I mean, she's thinking about them. Like, she's also feeling proud of these students who are turning out at these events. It's, I think, one of the few things that's making her feel a little better in these terrible days that she's going through. So keep that in mind. You know, sign up for these events and get out there. And speaking of Erica Kirk, I want to start today with an update to our Megyn Kelly Live tour. We have an addition to our Glendale, Arizona date that's really important for me to tell you about. Joining me for that November 22nd event, the last stop on our tour, will be Erica Kirk. I am so grateful that she has agreed to do it. I believe this will be her first appearance and her first lengthy sit-down interview in front of a live audience, which is extremely brave on her part. And when I asked her, she did not hesitate for 1 minute. She's incredible. As you guys know, Charlie was supposed to be there with me. He was actually going to come to Bakersfield, California, but Glendale is her backyard. So this is easy for her, and we wanted to keep it as easy as possible. You can get tickets. I recommend you do it right now at megynkelly.com. They're already flying off the shelf, but when everybody realizes they're going to see Erica, I mean, it's going to be really tough to get one. So honestly, it's not a marketing thing. I'm not going to have trouble selling tickets for this. I just want you, the Megyn Kelly listeners, to get them first. So go to megynkelly.com and get those tickets to see Erica Kirk. Last stop of the tour in Glendale, Arizona. And by the way, find out information and come join us at any of the 10 stops across the country. If Glendale's not close to you, check it out, because we're hitting all pockets of the country, and I would love to see you. Okay, for now, let's get back to the news. Back with me today, the EJs are here. Emily Jashinsky, who's host of After Party on the MK Media Podcast Network, and Eliana Johnson. She's an editor, the editor-in-chief of the Free Beacon, who is back with us after a couple of months away with her newborn baby boy. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Let's be honest. America can still be a dangerous place. and you cannot afford to wait for help. Sure, you could use a firearm, but in today's America, defending yourself with deadly force could have legal consequences. According to FBI data, 99.9% of all altercations do not require lethal force. And that's exactly why many are turning to Byrna. Byrna is proudly American, hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. These less lethal self-defense launchers are trusted by hundreds of government agencies, law enforcement departments, and private security companies, too. Over 600,000 Byrna pistols have been sold, most to private citizens who just refuse to be victims. Byrna launches fire rock hard. Launchers fire rock hard kinetic rounds. All right, so that's one option. Rock hard kinetic rounds that like hurt and stop the perp. And they also fire these powerful tear gas and pepper projectiles, which is sort of like pepper spray on steroids that incapacitates the bad guy, like where they are. Capable of stopping a threat from up to 60 feet away. No background checks, no waiting periods, and Byrna can ship straight to your door. By the way, the pistol looks very realistic. Take responsibility. Protect your future. Visit Byrna.com right now or your local Sportsman's Warehouse. That's BYRNA.com or your local Sportsman's Warehouse. Visit now and be prepared to defend. EJs, welcome back. And Eliana, congrats.
Thank you.
It's to your credit that all your appearances on the show, and we never even knew you were pregnant. You did not balloon up like a tick, like yours truly did with all three children.
Trust me, you got to move the camera down.
I did actually run into Eliana at the airport while she was pregnant.
Oh
and I was
my
like,
gosh.
You're pregnant.
We ran into each other, and I ran straight into the bathroom and puked all over myself when I saw Emily.
Oh, no.
I couldn't even stop and talk.
It was because of me.
I had to buy another set of clothes at the airport.
Wow, I didn't know she had that strong an effect on people, but I love her or hate her. She brings out strong emotions. That's so great. I'm thrilled to have you both back together. There's so much going on. I don't even know where to begin, but I guess I'm going to start. Hopefully the audience will forgive me because we were not live yesterday. I was on my way down to Virginia Tech, so we aired our interview that we did a week earlier with Matthew McConaughey, which is actually really interesting. I hope people listen to it if they missed it. So I did not get the chance to talk about Jimmy Kimmel's return, and I have a few things I want to say about it, and I'd love to get your takes on it too. He did go back to the airwaves on Tuesday night and was a self-pitying baby. That was my take on it. Boo effing who. He almost cried for himself. He wasn't sorry about what he said about MAGA breeding the Charlie Kirk shooter, which was a lie. And the reason I know is because he didn't correct the record, nor did he apologize. It was unbelievable. He got there and cried and whined for himself. Hold on, my audience is going to show that. I think it's SOP 4, I think, where he's blubbering on. But if I'm not right, team, you pick the right one.
I've been hearing a lot about what I need to say and do tonight. And the truth is, I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human. And that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it.
Okay. Do we have the original Sin soundbite? Can we play that? Because what he did was make light of the murder of a young man. He absolutely made light of Charlie Kirk's murder. He made a joke out of it. He ripped on MAGA, which was suffering and grieving, and he thought that they would be a fun target to mock, and then suggested they were the ones who did this, that this guy was MAGA, which was a lie. So he may not have intended to do that, but that's exactly what this wasn't fodder for jokes. And he treated it like it was. Do we have it? No, stand by. We're getting it. We're pulling it over. In the meantime, I'll show you one other. SOT 7.
On Sunday, Erica Kirk forgave the man who shot her husband. She forgave him. That is an example we should follow. If you believe in the teachings of Jesus as I do, there it was. That's it. A selfless act of grace forgiveness from a grieving widow. It touched me deeply. And I hope
he's crying for
it
himself.
touches many. And if there's anything we should take from this tragedy to carry forward, I hope it can be that, and not this.
He is crying for himself. And on top of it, the reason he's speaking about Erica Kirk's call for forgiveness, her willingness to forgive, is because he wants everyone to forgive him without actually apologizing or owning up to what he did. That's why he's so deeply touched by it. He's basically saying, forgive me. Let me off the hook. I deserve forgiveness, though he doesn't even acknowledge what he actually did. And in the context of this whole thing, actually doubles down by ripping on MAGA and conservatives here in SOT 3.
I want to thank the people who don't support my show and what I believe, but support my right to share those beliefs anyway. People who I never would have imagined, like Ben Shapiro, Clay Travis, Candace Owens, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, even my old pal Ted Cruz. I don't think I've ever said this before, but Ted Cruz is right. Even though I don't agree with many of those people on most subjects, some of the things they say even make me want to throw up. It takes courage for them to speak out against this administration, and they did, and they deserve credit for it. And thanks.
See, that's how he had to do it. They make me want to barf, but appreciate the support with no apology whatsoever. And last but not least, then he comes out, and we do have the original sin that caused all the trouble. I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to play Soundbite 5. So first, let's watch what got him in trouble last week.
We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
So he was making light of it. He absolutely was making light of it. It just wasn't funny, and it wasn't true. And now he comes out and says this in SOT 5.
I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't.
Okay.
Ever.
Okay. He didn't represent anyone. That's because he was a leftist. If this guy had right-wing messages on those bullet casings, you think Jimmy Kimmel would be saying, oh, he's just sick. He didn't represent anyone. If it's a leftist, then all the messaging, all of their political ideology, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. That's what's so interesting about this particular assassination when we talk about motivation, is that this guy actually doesn't seem to be a lunatic. That guy who shot up the Minneapolis school and church with the young children seemed like a lunatic. He seemed possessed to me, to be honest. But that guy was a nut who obviously was trans and all the other problems. But this guy doesn't seem like a nut. He seems very high functioning. There are no reports about him being crazy. He was a political assassin, plain and simple, and was no more crazy than anybody who takes murder as an option is crazy. And he won't acknowledge that. I don't think he represents anybody. Yes, no, he does. He was indoctrinated by the left, by rhetoric from the left, rhetoric that Jimmy Kimmel espouses all the time. I thought it was a total fail, Emily. The whole thing was a fail. And all the blubbering was for himself. It wasn't for Erica Kirk. It wasn't for Charlie. It certainly wasn't for MAGA, or whom he has insulted and wrongly blamed. And the whole talk of forgiveness was a plea to the broadcasters and the affiliates for himself. The whole thing was about one thing. Here it is. Yeah. Your thoughts.
Well, now that we just watched all of those clips again, it occurred to me that emotion is completely misplaced when you compare with how he reacted in the aftermath. When you juxtapose it with the clip of him pointing the finger at MAGA, which is just like obviously verifiably what he did. And we had Michael Knowles on After Party last night. He was saying that is actually what upset people. There have been a million jokes made in the aftermath of the assassination, and people have taken issue with them and been like, that's gross. But what sent people through the roof about Jimmy Kimmel was specifically that he was spreading in this like weird clapter line a lie. He was spreading something that was untrue at the time that he said it. Everybody knew it was untrue and that it's a damaging lie. And that's particularly what was pissing people off. Now, watching it back, compared to him crying after he got in trouble, it occurs to me he should have been crying through his monologues when he was talking about this a couple of days after it happened, not after he got in trouble. It's actually like really, it's sort of strange to see him crying now and acting as though this is an act of bravery, that this is him performing when it really is just him performing in the aftermath of what happened with him getting in trouble, not the aftermath of the national trauma that even people on the left went through when they saw someone get shot in cold blood.
Yeah. I mean, you know who actually shed some tears for Charlie Kirk on the left? Jamie Lee Curtis. Mm-hmm. She is somebody who said, I disagreed with him on everything, but a young man was shot, a father, a 31-year-old, and actually shed tears, a totally appropriate human reaction. Jimmy Kimmel didn't shed tears over Charlie Kirk. He cried for himself because he almost lost his precious show, Eliana. That's why he was able to work up that emotion into his voice because, oh my God, I'm not going to be on this stage under the Klieg lights anymore.
I think what was enraging about the faux apology is that what he said was, I didn't mean to make light of this. Well, I have to say, that's not what was upsetting to me, or I think many others about this. It's that what he said wasn't a joke. He said MAGA's trying to pretend that it wasn't one of them who did this. That wasn't a joke. He was serious about that. And then his apology was, oh, I didn't mean to do that, rather than I'm sorry for what I did. He did blame a specific group for the murder. And he says, for those of you who think I pointed a finger, I get why you're upset. He did point a finger, and he pointed it at the wrong group. So we got a phony apology. And then he said, thank you for standing up, against the Trump government for my right to say this. And look, I personally wish that Brendan Carr and the FCC hadn't inserted themselves into this. But what's really playing out here is a dynamic between the liberal Hollywood elites, Disney, Bob Iger on the one hand, and conservative-owned local stations on the other. If it really was the Trump government keeping Jimmy Kimmel off the air, he wouldn't be back on. And we still have local stations keeping him off. And I have to say, we have now the mainstream media heralding how many people tuned in to see Jimmy Kimmel's monologue. 6 million viewers tuned in to see Jimmy Kimmel. Look, even I, who've literally never watched his show, was interested to hear what he was going to say last night or 2 nights ago. Of course, it was a news event. Okay, yeah, so no big deal. Now we have a standoff between liberal Hollywood and the conservative station owners who are sick and tired of having 10 hours a week between Jimmy Kimmel on the one hand and The View on the other shoved down their throats every day.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention what happens on World News Tonight with David Muir.
Yeah,
we all saw his bias at that presidential debate. Everybody knows exactly where he stands, as well as that co-host of his, Lindsay Davis.
With his pinned tight T-shirt and jacket going through the flood.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Cinching the waist.
Yeah.
Even I don't cinch the waist when I go out to a disaster zone.
And his friend Matt Gutman.
And now here is, Matt Gutman, how beautiful the texts were between the Charlie assassin and his gay, trans, furry lover. So touching. It was so touching. Good job, ABC. So let's see. Maybe Kimmel's now had a change of heart. Maybe he's going to have a different type of program now that he comes back and he's trying to understand MAGA, and he's so grateful to Ted Cruz and Candace Owens and Clay Travis. Let's see what he did last night, SOT 10.
For those who think I go too hard on Donald Trump, to the point where there are still a lot of people who think I should be pulled off the air for making fun of Donald Trump. So I want to explain. I talk about Trump more than anything because he's a bully. I don't like bullies. I played the clarinet in high school, okay? So I just don't like him. Donald Trump is an old-fashioned 80s movie-style bully, taking your lunch money. And if you give it to him once, he'll take it again. Two things he loves, lunch and money, okay? He will take that peanut butter and jelly sandwich your mom cut in half like a triangle for you. He will gobble it up in front of your face, and then he'll eat your little Ziploc bag of Oreos, too. And he'll take the note your mother put in your lunchbox, and he'll read it aloud to everyone. Oh, look, Mommy loves her little boy. And then he'll smile with a bunch of cookies in his teeth. And he'll grab you by your nipples, and he'll twist them until you have 2 holes in your Latigra shirt because your parents couldn't afford an Izod. And he'll stuff you in a locker, and he'll stomp on your trapper keeper and slam the door. That is Donald Trump. Okay?
This is so ridiculous. I feel like Emily, you are genuinely funny. You've made me laugh out loud many times on your show, After Party with Emily Jashinsky. I'm mildly amusing. Eliana, I think you're funny too. You're very clever. However, I would never think that because I'm occasionally funny, I could host a late night show. I would never think I could go out there and do Jimmy Kimmel. I just wouldn't. And it has dawned on me in watching all these clips, because I don't watch his show either. He's not funny either. Like, I could totally do this. I've been too hard on myself. All 3 of us could go out there and host a non-funny show where we just say political thoughts. We actually do that for a living already. How is this comedy? How are people giving him the excuse that he's a comedian? He's not even trying to be funny. That's just some weird, long, rambling, Twitter post about the nipples and the trapper keeper. It's not even arguably clever. But the point is, he's back to himself, Emily. He's learned nothing. He's just glad that he dodged a show-killing bullet, unlike our friend Charlie, who didn't dodge a life-killing one, which is really the issue now, isn't it?
Well, and the framing in the clip that we just watched is him saying, people want me off of the air because I make jokes about Donald Trump. That is not true. Literally nobody wants him off of the air because he makes jokes about Donald Trump. You know who actually makes a lot of jokes about Donald Trump? Donald Trump. Even people close to Donald Trump make jokes about Donald Trump that he will occasionally clearly be amused by. He was the one who went on Fallon and had his hair ruffled. Nobody is mad about jokes about Donald Trump. People are mad that all Jimmy Kimmel has grown into. Someone who I would say actually used to be funny when he was out there with Carolla doing The Man Show. He grew into this audience-captured Trump obsessive over the last 10 years who only talks about Donald Trump. That's what people are annoyed with. They want to tune into late night shows to see something that's genuinely going to make them laugh. Now, some of that has shifted with the business models in that Colbert and Kimmel have developed these really intensely political audiences because it's just a much smaller piece of the pie than late night was getting even 20 years ago. And so you get the resistance wine moms tuning in for their nightly dose of affirmation from these guys. So part of it is that, but nobody who's protesting ABC or is mad at their local Sinclair station or Nexstar station, for example, if they end up seeing Kimmel back on the air. Those audiences in more conservative communities, they aren't mad at Kimmel for making jokes about Trump. They're mad at Kimmel for only making jokes about Donald Trump, for finding much less humor in the very hilarious Democrats, and for there being this wildly disproportional focus on Trump and MAGA, which is exactly brings us back to the line that got him in trouble, pointing the finger at MAGA, because he is blinded by his own ideological fixations in a way that makes him unfunny. He can't genuinely see the humor across the board. Not even both sides, all sides, everyone, which is what a comedian is supposed to do.
And now, Eliana, yesterday we were subjected to a day full of leftist media Jesus is back. He's back. Thank God. Jimmy Kimmel went back on and gave the greatest monologue in human history. Eliana, here's just a little taste in SOT 13.
He doesn't really want this to be about him. He has been thrust into this bigger and frankly more consequential role. He's trying to talk about free speech rights, not for late night talk show hosts, but for all Americans. Lengthy and emotional monologue. This was a comeback in every sense of the word.
It's framed perfectly. It's not left wing against right wing. This is big government versus the people. This is a centralized state versus individual rights, especially if it's political speech, which is the most sacred, protected speech in the First Amendment.
Jimmy Kimmel broke his silence here last night with a lengthy and a heartfelt monologue.
Kimmel also delivering a searing defense of free speech.
We're glad to see Jimmy back. I'm glad to see Jimmy back on air. That's where we're going to begin.
It was a triumphant return for late night host Jimmy Kimmel.
Last night's show was emotional. It was passionate. Ultimately, it was a tribute to free speech.
Oh, my Lord. I can't. Thoughts on that one?
I mean, precisely, I think, what we would expect. And the truth is, it's not worth the attention that it's getting in the mainstream, but it's also not, I think the framing is off, because the real story now is this standoff, as I mentioned before, between liberal Hollywood, ABC News, and the local stations, which are still not carrying him. And so
Nexstar and Sinclair, which is some 22% of his audience.
And Sinclair, exactly. And so this story is still going to play out, and it is no longer about free speech. It's about business.
To the point you were just making, Emily, about how biased these late night programs are, and how the flyover country that is represented by Sinclair and Nexstar, that they've had it. This was tweeted out by a couple of people yesterday, but it's a tally of the guest list on the late night shows from just January 2023, you saw this, through July of 2025. And here's the sampling. Stephen Colbert has a number of liberals or Democrats, 176. Number of conservatives or Republicans, 1. The Daily Show, 157 Democrats, 9 conservatives. Seth Meyers, 68 Democrats, 0 Republicans or conservatives. Jimmy Kimmel, 58 liberals or Democrats. How many Republicans or conservatives has he had? 2. 2 for Jimmy Kimmel to 58 Dems. Fallon, 41 Dems, 2 Republicans. Trevor Noah, 7 Democrats, 0 Republicans. James Corden, 4 Democrats, 0 Republicans. The ultimate tally is 511 Democrats, 14 Republicans. This is not any attempt to be funny. This is an attempt to drive votes by all of those guys. We've been living it firsthand for years now. Oh, you could go back before 2023 and the numbers would be just as bad, which is why Sinclair and Nexstar are holding the line, because they're not getting tons of phone calls from Jimmy Kimmel fans saying, "Where's my Jimmy Kimmel? I want to watch it tonight." Or they would be changing their decision.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pivotal moment in television history, I think, as silly as that may sound, because what you're seeing is the sorting patterns that are going to come once, whether or not somebody has like a broadcast license in the scarce airwaves of the 1960s, for example. When that model is blown up, what we're going to see is much more partisan or ideological sorting, because people have more choice and people are going to go to places where they have more choice. Still, though, even still, what Jimmy Kimmel could be doing is something a lot more like what Greg Gutfeld, who I think gets higher numbers than him, does, which is actually
he does.
It's not like he's throwing and it's not like Gutfeld's like throwing a million libs at his viewers all of the time, but actually they do have conversations with people who like Trump, don't like Trump, and it's funny to see it like picked apart from both sides to audience members who actually like just want to laugh. And yes, it's very political, but there's actually a bigger market than they realize for humor that isn't just obsessively fixated on Donald Trump. They would probably be doing better if they weren't obsessively fixated on Donald Trump. And that's what I think the Nexstar Sinclair protest is showing. I think Nexstar's merger question is salient. I'm more with Ted Cruz and the Brendan Carr stuff, but all of that is to say, what we're seeing right now genuinely is these stations with more conservative audiences say, we do not need to air you. It's not good for our business to air you right now. So Disney, why don't you respond to us instead of all of the like 400 Hollywood people who signed their letter casting Kimmel as a victim of a free speech issue, when in reality, you are really looking at a culture war business conversation.
Okay, but I disagree with both of you on Brendan Carr. I'm totally in favor of what happened here. If Brendan Carr hadn't done what he did, then it is not at all clear to me that Jimmy Kimmel would have been pulled for those 5 days. I don't know. I really don't know, but he did rattle the cage. I'm sure they were getting tons of calls from their, viewers saying, I'm angry about what they saw in there. But what Brendan Carr basically did was empower the affiliates to make an independent decision, something they didn't feel empowered to do prior to Brendan being like, hey, there is this obligation to air programming in the public interest. And I'm the person who oversees that. And suddenly you had two affiliates saying, you know what, you're right. We are empowered to say no. Goodbye, Jimmy. And they're holding the line even after they put him back on the air, and Brendan Carr has completely stood down on whatever threat he offered on Benny Johnson. So they did not need to do it to please him, but they're standing by the decision. But I don't know that they would have in the first place. My simple point is we as conservatives are better off, or independent minded, however you describe yourself. We're better off now than we were a week ago. It is a good thing for America that Jimmy Kimmel was off the air for 5 nights and that the leftists felt one tiny dose of what we have been feeling for years on the right. For years. How many of our people have been canceled? And we don't get canceled and put back on the air for 5 days. Trust me, okay? Trust me. Some of us have to work our asses off from ground zero to rebuild our careers from nothing. And people like Jimmy Kimmel have been celebrating when all of us get canceled for nothing, for much less than what he did. And the censorship that went on during the Biden years, with the social media companies during COVID, George Floyd-a-palooza, everybody's YouTube being pulled because they said the wrong thing about January 6th. F these people. Just this week, Google reinstated all these YouTube accounts it had pulled for misinformation during those dark years of the Biden administration. Our people have been having this happen to them for years, and not for 5 nights. So for 5 nights, they experienced what it's like to be a conservative. And don't tell me the government hasn't gotten involved when their people get censored, when our people get censored, because that's what was happening during COVID. That's what happened. The social media companies did censor us because they had pressure from the Biden administration. And the Biden White House had a conference about it, a press conference. It's on camera. They admitted it. Not to mention Zuckerberg has been on camera admitting it. Google on paper admitted it yesterday. We know this to be true from the Twitter files, etc.
Hunter Biden laptop.
The Hunter Biden laptop. That's another one. So how dare they? How dare they look at us and ask us to cry tears and say, live up to your principles, free speech? No, suck it. Have a taste of our medicine. Now you'll feel what we feel, just a tiny little ounce of it. And maybe that will stop you from abusing your powers when you inevitably return to government, to being in charge of government. It's the only way. It's like the lawfare. They won't stop unless Comey gets prosecuted. Letitia James needs to get prosecuted. Adam Schiff needs to get prosecuted, assuming that they have a good faith basis for the charges. There is no other way of restoring things to normal. We all want the same thing. All three of us want the same thing. We want free speech. We don't want people going after hate speech. We don't want lawfare used against political candidates. It's a question of tactics right now.
Well, Megyn, I think you are articulating the views and the sentiment and certainly the emotions of most Trump voters who have zero patience for the sort of constitutional regulatory arguments that Ted Cruz was articulating. And for those of us like Emily and I think, who say we wish Brendan Carr hadn't gotten involved, it's not good for the government to do these sorts of things, they would say, just as you have, that this stuff has already happened, and it's happened to folks on the right. And so here's the taste of your own medicine. I, for one, am skeptical that giving them a taste of their own medicine will return things to normal, but I'm certainly sympathetic to your view.
Well, and I, just quickly on that, I actually think ABC would have taken Kimmel, Disney would have taken Kimmel off of the air without what Brendan Carr said. I think they were probably going to do it anyway because Sinclair and Nexstar were under significant pressure and the tensions were so high. And my position, honestly, is that we don't need to...
You can make a good case for that.
Yeah, my position, honestly, is we don't need to have the public interest standard for broadcasting licenses anymore. I think people disagree with that, but I just think everything has been so democratized and fractured that it's not the 1960s. We really don't need to have that. But overall, I agree. Like, the sentiments here, just to think about the Hunter Biden laptop, there are a lot of disingenuous arguments being made on the left from people who are openly being dishonest, but also people who are completely ignorant because they didn't follow these stories during the Biden administration. Sean Davis at The Federalist reported years ago that actually a CIA email address was being used in the process of collecting those signatories for the 51 former intelligence agents who came out and said the Hunter Biden laptop had all of the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, knowing full well that it would lead to suppression of the story, of a piece of legitimate journalism within the spirit of the First Amendment, which is insane a month before a presidential election. So what you have there is an example, actually, of government being involved in the process. Is it apples to apples? No, nothing's apples to apples. Want to know why? Because there's no freaking conservative late night host on ABC, NBC, or CBS who could possibly be censored by the FCC. Like, that's not a thing that exists. There's no conservative news anchor at any of those networks who could be censored. Who's the conservative David Muir? Tell me. There isn't one.
No, there isn't one.
What do you mean? Like, it's going to be flipped around? It already has been. Like, that is abundantly true.
I have to tell you about this conversation. I don't think these guys would mind, but I had a conversation with Benny Johnson and Jack Posobiec at Charlie's memorial. And they were very close to Charlie. They both spoke at the funeral, and they were amazing. Both of them were incredible, very moving remarks. They knew him very well. And I was very moved by what they said to me just privately. Like, they had a lot of thoughts on where we are in terms of this fight. And they're angry. They're angry about what's happened to Charlie, like I am. I feel it too. And one of them said something, and I thought, I liked it. It was in no way meant to be like a sexist comment. It was about like tactics. And they were on the same page as I am in terms of where we go next now. Where we go next now that our people are actually getting killed before our very eyes. And I can't remember which one of them said it, forgive me, but they said something to the effect of, right now, we need the men to take control. Like, let the men get this. And what they meant by it was, we can't have softness making the decisions about where we go from here. We need hard edges at this point to fight these lunatics on the left who are getting our people killed. And it's not a time for olive branches. It's not a time for standing down or downshifting. It's a time for actual rhetorical battle. They're not talking about hurting anybody physically, obviously. They're talking about no mercy on these fights that we're having. And I could not be more aligned with that. I really like Ted Cruz. I've always liked Ted Cruz. I actually began the Kelly File with him as my first guest. I actually launched this show. He was one of my very first guests. But I totally disagree with him. I totally disagree with his Wall Street Journal approach. I know why he's doing it. He considers himself a principled conservative, and he's standing by his ideals. But the ideals remain. This is a question of tactics and how to affect them. And I disagree that taking the high road is working for us. It isn't. Okay, so that's that. We've got to keep going. I do want to show one thing. Jimmy Kimmel never saw a conservative get canceled that he didn't celebrate. Ever. Just a walk down memory lane so you can see how he behaved when, for example, Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox.
Fox News has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means. Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is. Now Tucker can spend more time at home tanning his testicles and touching himself to that sexy green M&M. Sadly, he's probably not done poisoning old people's brains. The question now is, where will he do it next? Will he go to OAN? Will he go to Newsmax? Will he crawl back up Satan's fiery beehole from whence he came? We don't know. One of the most despicable mother Tuckers ever to appear on American television.
And Tucker got fired for nothing. Tucker hadn't said some terrible thing about the other side the night before that everybody was focusing on him. Like, what are they going to do about Tucker? What's happening? No, to this day, we've never had a clear reason for why they separated with Tucker, but he loved to watch him lose his job. He was thrilled about it. And here he is about Trump getting banned from all social media under pressure from the government. Here he is.
Trump has been suspended from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even Snapchat. But don't worry, Mr. President, there are still plenty of apps you do have access to. You still have Spotify to drown out the sound of millions of people cheering as you leave. And when no one else wants you, don't forget, there's always your old friend, the Domino's Pizza Tracker. Not only did Trump get banned from Twitter, Google, Apple, and Amazon removed the Parler app from their platforms. Parler is where all the right-wingers gather to post QAnon nonsense and misspell the word parlor. Trumpers are complaining bitterly that they're being silenced. In fact, they won't shut up about being silenced. On their 3 propaganda TV networks, on 1,000 conservative radio shows, all over the internet, they are screaming about being silenced. They won't be silent about being silenced.
I'm like, how does anybody feel sorry for him, Eliana?
Well, the shoe's on the other foot now, and it turns out that when Jimmy Kimmel's silenced, he has a lot of allies going to bat for him. And I think Emily's right. Like, you can't, there aren't apples to apples simply because the right doesn't have the same levers of control in the media and the same number of voices that will speak out about it. So we heard every voice in the mainstream media come to Jimmy Kimmel's defense. But we didn't hear the same thing when voices on the right were silenced by big tech, Twitter, Facebook, and all the rest during COVID and everything else. And that's why people are angry now and why they're happy to see Jimmy Kimmel pulled off the air.
Yeah, and the media was part of it. I mean, I posted this on Twitter yesterday and on Instagram. You know, when I got canned at NBC because I asked a question about blackface Halloween costumes and when they went from something that wouldn't get you canceled in the 70s and the 80s to a day when they would. At the time, I didn't know that my own network, NBC, was recently, like within 2 years of my comments, actually airing shows with blackface characters, like on Scrubs, among others. But in any event, I thought it had gone away as an acceptable practice 70s and 80s. And I said, when did it happen? You know, that it changed into a cancelable offense. And then I lost my job. And everybody in the press was calling me a racist. And I was all over newspapers as a racist. And did Jimmy Kimmel, who has, unlike yours truly, actually worn blackface repeatedly in his case, as Karl Malone, where he went on his show and spoke in Ebonics. I mean, it was the most racist, offensive thing. As Oprah in a fat suit with his black face, darning socks, and doing totally offensive behaviors as the fat Oprah. Did Jimmy Kimmel say, hey, he had a platform, what you're doing is wrong. This isn't right. What she said is right. People, the reason I did that and wore those costumes is because there was a day, not in the too distant past, when that wasn't considered universally offensive. That's an okay question, she asked. No. Me too. He let me twist in the wind. He's never had anything but scorn for me once he realized I didn't hate Trump. When he thought I hated Trump, he wanted to celebrate me. He had me on the show. The guy is disgusting. He hates everyone right of center. And therefore, I look forward to watching his show suffer. And as it will. Once this initial clamoring around, oh, he's back, dies down, he'll go back to his shitty ratings. And his separation from ABC, I believe, is now inevitable. I don't think Disney wants this headache. So we'll see. It's probably going to take a little longer than it otherwise would have, but he's not long for the wear at ABC. That's my prediction. Okay. Now, speaking of leftists who will not tell the truth, we have the ICE situation down in Dallas from yesterday, where some man took a gun and opened fire on an ICE truck and killed 2 detainees, we believe 2, and himself. They've gone back and forth on the number. It was like, first they said 2 and 1 was in critical. Then they said it was 1 and the 2 were in critical. In any event, he shot 3 detainees and then killed himself. And it's very clear that the man was anti-ICE because he literally wrote on the bullets, anti-ICE. Literally the words anti-ICE. So we really didn't have to look far for his motivation. It's not unlike what happened in the Charlie Kirk case. We find out, by the way, from the FBI today, that's probably by design because he was obsessively searching for information about the Charlie Kirk case prior to committing this heinous crime, in which the killer wrote his motivation on his bullet casings. So here again, now the left suddenly they don't accept these pictures. Suddenly they don't accept the writing on the bullets. You know, Kash Patel must have done it himself. They're not going to accept it because it's a motivation that is leftist. Then they go to the guy's car yesterday and they search it, and he's got literally communist paraphernalia in there. It turns out the guy's not just left. He may actually be a communist based on the flyers that they found and the materials they found in his car. And then today we got a release from the FBI that really cements it. But before we got the nail in the coffin release from the FBI today, so I'm going to give NPR the benefit of they didn't see the Kash Patel release before they said it. But they said they knew about the commie stuff. They knew about the anti-ICE bullet casing. And this is how they described the North Texas shooting at an ICE facility in SOT 15 today.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, I mean, this is just the most recent attack on an immigration facility in Texas. What can you tell us about the other incidents that have led up to this moment?
Well, on July 4th, a gunman shot at a local police officer during a protest outside an ICE facility in Alvarado. That's about 30 miles south of Fort Worth. 17 people have been arrested. And then 3 days after that shooting, a man opened fire at a Customs and Border Protection facility in McAllen, a border city along the Rio Grande. He was killed by law enforcement. And then in late August, the Dallas ICE office that was the site of yesterday's shooting got a bomb threat where a man at the entrance of the building claimed to have an explosive in his bag. Immigration and immigrants have been at the center of the political divide, often portrayed in a negative light. And yesterday, some immigrants became victims of this political rhetoric.
Got it? Yeah, no, me neither. They intentionally kept it vague, Emily, and hard to understand because they don't want to tell you he was clearly motivated by leftist ideology. He hated ICE. He was anti-ICE. I have a piece of advice for you, North Texas reporter Toluwani Osibamowo. Just read the bullet. You don't have to go far. Read the damn bullet. It's right there, black and white. But no, there's just been rhetoric. There's been political rhetoric around immigrants and immigration that may have infected the shooter in this case. Like what? What do you mean? She's trying to suggest it's like Trump. It's like Tom Homan's rhetoric. That's what she's trying to do there. No, this guy was motivated by you lunatics who were out there ripping on ICE, demonizing ICE. And now we know that. Okay, this isn't Megyn Kelly speculation, but we know that because that actually came out. The FBI sent out a tweet today. Hold on, I'm trying to find it because I've got 10,000 things in front of me. This says as follows from Kash Patel. The perp downloaded a document titled Dallas County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management containing a list of DHS facilities. He conducted multiple searches of ballistics and the Charlie Kirk shot video between 9/23 and 9/24. Between August 19th and 8/24, August 24th, he searched apps that tracked the presence of ICE agents. One of the handwritten notes recovered read, quote, "Hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof?" And so on. I mean, like I can't go through this again, Emily, where it's like, we may never know. Just general rhetoric about immigration. That might be what was in the guy's head.
And I think also what's even worse in some cases than them openly lying is that they've deluded themselves into believing it actually lets the left off the hook to say, well, this guy was just a weirdo. He was deep in online spaces, 4chan, whatever, as though that excuses the left, even though when we're looking at the last 3 heinous acts of political violence that have occurred within the space of basically a month, so from Minnesota to Charlie and now Dallas ICE, all of the indications, even if it's meme-infested type of propaganda that we find around the shooter, even if that's the case, directionally what they are doing is blatantly anti-conservative. It is blatantly anti-right violence in every case. Now, I'm open to seeing more evidence. Like, it's such a weird thing to do, to just write anti-ICE. I would love to know where that comes from and what's going on. But it's clearly anti-ICE when you now have the full picture. Even as of yesterday, we had an increasingly full picture. So it's just an insane delusion. And that's what's been so dangerous in the last couple of weeks since what happened
mark my words.
Utah Valley.
Even after, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror, they're still going to say, gee, we don't know. Unclear, Eliana.
Well, we're at a place where you can't get the news from the news media. I'm looking at a piece in The Hill where it says motive sought in Dallas ICE facility shooting. And the New York Times writes, the actual motivation behind the messages written on the bullets in both Mr. Kirk's assassination and Wednesday's killing are still not known.
Oh, my God.
It's a cope.
Yep. And this is why people don't trust the media. You cannot get the truth or the news from them.
And it matters. It actually matters, because the lying media are infecting these people's brains. Where did this shooter, the Charlie shooter, get the fascist, anti-fascist narrative from? Did he just make that up? He just looked at Charlie and thought, he seems like a fascist to me. Doubt it. Maybe we'll find out I'm wrong.
Full of hate.
I doubt it.
That he's full of hate.
Yeah. Where did he hear that? Where did this guy get his motivation from? Why does he think that? Why is he anti-ICE? Tell me. Let's find out. But the media is a huge part of the problem, and they show zero self-awareness. I've got to take a break. Pause it right there. We're going to pick it up right there in 1 minute. Don't go away. You know all those fad diets. Half of Americans do it. And if you do it enough, you could be at risk of diabetes, liver damage, heart attack, and stroke. Weight cycling is when you lose 10 or more pounds, but then you put the pounds back on, plus a couple more. That puts tremendous strain on your organs and can lead to serious health issues. Bottom line, most people need help to stop weight cycling. And this is why I want to tell you about non-prescription Lean, created by doctors. Lean is an oral supplement, not a GLP-1 injectable. It uses studied ingredients, which Lean says target weight loss in 3 powerful ways: maintaining healthy blood sugar, helping control appetite and cravings, burning fat by converting it to energy. And burning fat helps keep the weight off. If you want to lose meaningful weight at a healthy pace and keep it off, consider adding Lean to your diet and exercise lifestyle. Get 20% off when you enter MK at takelean.com. That's code MK at takelean.com. We absolutely have to keep talking. It's more important now than ever. To cower, to hide, to go silent is not the answer. And all I can tell you is there is no fucking way I am canceling one stop on this tour. Not one stop. I'm going. I'm going to stand on these stages, and I'm going to say all the things that we say all the time on this show. We're gonna make it safe for me. We're gonna make it safe for my team and my guests and you. We're going coast to coast and do something really important, which is say what's true and what's real to honor him. I really now more than ever would love to see you all face to face. God, I would love to see you face to face. I need to see you face to face. I am doing this tour, and I would love for you to join me. MegynKelly.com for the tickets. So ladies, as I began last hour, we talked about the fact that I appeared at a Turning Point event at Virginia Tech. It was very cordial. It was very cool, I have to say. Great to get out there and actually talk to these young people and see what's on their minds. Some very, very smart questions, some interesting in a different way. And there's one exchange that's getting some pickup today. I'm going to play it, and then we can talk about it. One young man came, as they say, loaded for bear. Here's how that went.
Why you support a president who contributes to the rhetoric that got your friend Charlie killed. We saw his rally recently. He said, "I hate my enemies." Stephen Miller said similar things. How can you support him when he contributed to what got Charlie killed?
Assumes facts, not evidence. What you said is not true.
70% of political violence is committed by Republicans.
Okay.
Look it up.
That's not
DOJ
true.
just pulled it. The DOJ just pulled it from their website. DOJ just pulled the study from their website because they're delusional.
That's not true, because
They just pulled it. Look it up.
Once you
the
pull
DOJ
the
pulled it from their website.
Once you pull the crazies out of there, it is overwhelmingly left-wing violence.
Google it.
We have had
every single person in the
understand.
audience. Google it right now.
You know, this is how we get here. So first of all, let me take on the first part of the premise of your question, that it was President Trump's rhetoric that led to an assassin killing our friend Charlie Kirk. That's a blatant lie. It's a defamatory blaspheme, and it's inappropriate in this setting.
That's not what I said.
We know. Yes, it is.
No, I said he contributed to the political atmosphere.
Well, then you have no point.
Tension.
Then your point is utterly empty. Contributing to the atmosphere. This guy was, no, let's just make clear. This guy was motivated by leftist ideology. We know it from the bullet casings. We know it from the Utah governor. We know it from his own mother. Yes, we do. Let's be really clear on that.
Even if that's true, so then you're saying, because, let's say this guy's a leftist, even if that's true, does that make it okay for the sitting president of the United States to incite violence against liberals?
The President of the United States has not accepted violence against liberals. The President of the United States made a joke at the Charlie Kirk Memorial, which was funny and self-deprecating. It was on the heels of Erica Kirk saying she, in an extraordinary moment, forgave her husband's killer.
He
and let me finish. And then President Trump got up and, making a joke, playing off of what Erica said, he said, we disagree. I need to do better. Erica's going to try to convince me, but I'm in a different place. And that's completely normal for a politician to be thinking about his political fights. And by the way, Trump has every right to loathe his enemies. They tried to put him in jail for the rest of his life. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to put his family in jail. And they tried to kill him.
Criminal. Jack Smith.
Wait. Okay, now you go.
Thank you for your time.
So that's how that went. But I would say this is not exactly this young man's fault, because on the subject of the media, that's clearly what's infected this guy's mind. He's consuming his media, we all know, from leftist media. And I'm just going to play one other soundbite. I played you the NPR thing yesterday on the Dallas ICE attack. Here's the Today, here's NBC Today on the Today Show. Here it is. Watch this. This is NBC's Priscilla Thompson, SOT 16.
And while President Trump and members of his administration are tying this attack to what they call rhetoric on the left against ICE and law enforcement, investigators on the ground here say that the shooter's motive remains unclear. In an interview with NBC News, the shooter's brother describing him as someone who didn't have strong feelings about ICE, adding he wasn't interested in politics on either side as far as he knew.
Okay, clearly the shooter's brother was wrong, because he wrote down his feelings about ICE at length, according to Kash Patel, in that post that I just read to you moments ago, and wrote, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof? He's been tracking ICE agents. He'd been searching for how the Charlie Kirk murder was done. He downloaded a document entitled Dallas County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, containing a list of the DHS facilities. And they go on to say further accumulated evidence to this point indicates a high degree of pre-attack planning. But anyway, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror is good enough for me. We'll see whether NBC updates its attack or its reports. Here's just one more. This is MSNBC in SOT 17.
You can't just assume by that what was written on that shell casing that that's necessarily his motivation. He could have been doing that to thinking it was funny, trying to put law enforcement on the wrong track. This is where when you analyze the person's phone, computer, talk to his family and friends, that you get an idea of what his motivation perhaps really was.
Cool. Does his exact writing that he wants to terrorize the ICE agents count? I look forward to all of these news outlets updating their reports, Eliana. I feel like that'll happen soon.
Yeah, it reminds me of Matt Dowd, who went on MSNBC and said it could have been friendly fire, that killed Charlie, aiming right at his face, because that makes sense. So most likely scenario here with the ICE thing is that it was probably meant to divert law enforcement, all the paperwork and everything, because that makes the most sense too. I mean, look, the pattern we see is that when left-wingers commit violence, we can never know the motive for their violence. And when right-wingers commit violence, the motive is always clear. It's the right-wing rhetoric over and over and over again, because the mainstream media, the news media, but we repeat ourselves, is motivated to obfuscate the motives of left-wingers. They are not informing, they are obfuscating.
Yeah. They do this over and over and over. Emily, there was an ABC, a shooter that went to ABC in Sacramento and started firing. And this shooter left a note that read, "For hiding Epstein and ignoring red flags, do not support Patel, Bongino, and Pambondi. They're next. CK from above," like as if it was Charlie Kirk. And again, I tweeted out, sarcastically, we may never know the motive. I mean, you can get that specific, right? And you're going to have leftists being like, oh, I guess it's a mystery.
And we know, because we went through the congressional baseball shooting in 2016 where there was no moment of pause and reflection on what happened when a crazed Bernie Sanders supporter, terrorized Republican congressmen at the congressional baseball game practice in Virginia. And so we have examples in the past of this happening. So the new cope is that they're saying, well, this is, online stuff. You can't be, they're not just like cookie cutter Democrat voters. And again, like that is just a cope. And part of what makes people so angry about the Jimmy Kimmel situation and this situation now is exactly what Eliana was just describing, the double standard. Everybody knows in their mind. It's not that, they're constructing this technical journalistic ethics case for why we don't technically know the motivations right now. It's like, we know that you would say the motivations were clear in another case. Like we get that. We know that. So please stop pretending that this is your exercise of just journalistic excellence and caution. Like that's bullshit.
Yeah, you're so right. And they're acting, Emily, like we can never know unless the shooter writes a manifesto that says, this is the exact reason why I am now going to shoot this gun. Right. Hello.
No, that would be a diversion.
Right. It's ridiculous. This is law enforcement. You've got to look at the shooter, look at what his ideology was, look what searches he was doing on the internet, and you put two and two together. They don't, in newsflash media, they don't always write down specifically, let me explain my motive. Sometimes you have to figure it out. And in these particular cases, it's obvious. It is literally written down on the bullets. That's what's driving me insane, Eliana, is that they can write it on the bullet casings, and we still have to listen to this dishonest leftist media give us this bullshit about motive. Who knows?
I have a super quick point just before Eliana. I remember at CPAC, this was during after the Unite the Right panic for post Charlottesville, early Trump administration. Someone spotted Richard Spencer at CPAC, and what CPAC went through. White supremacist. Yeah, to get him the hell out of CPAC immediately. We do not see the equivalent of. That example just popped into my mind, but the right immediately was like, holy smokes, we have to purge Richard Spencer literally physically from this conference. And that is, I think, an instructive example of where the double standards have real effects.
Go ahead, Eliana.
No, I think you're exactly right. And it's in every single outlet. And I think what the left and the mainstream media don't realize is that this has become a joke among people like us. Like, we pull out the lines in the New York Times report, in the Hill, in the ABC News broadcast. We're copying and pasting them to each other, every line they write, where authorities are still searching for the motive. And we're laughing about it because it is laughable. It is laughable at this point. Their failure to do their jobs and inform the public, and the intentional obfuscation of the truth.
But the real world consequences of that are exactly it's not, we do laugh about it and it is funny and you can only laugh, but it's the kid who came up to the microphone, Megyn, and cited that story about 70% of violence being committed by, quote, Republicans. So first, he's not even getting the study right. But second of all, it's because that study and studies like it were circulated widely in the quote mainstream media after what happened to Charlie, which is, first of all, just an insane thing to do. But second of all, these studies were insane methodologically. Tim Carney fisked them in the Washington Examiner really effectively. People should go check that out because it was fantastic. But the journalists were repeating these studies because it confirmed their biases, confirmed their priors without even digging into the methodology and being like, holy smokes, this is deeply problematic.
I mean, even the Atlantic, which is no conservative publication, just had an article saying, well, for the first time in 30 years, that's how they put it. But even they're admitting that left-wing terrorism is dominant in America. I mean, that's just a fact. I really don't have a lot of patience to debate it. It's like, I mean, for me, that was the thing that really did set me out, because we're at a fucking event where Charlie Kirk is supposed to be present. It's got his name on the door. He's the CEO of the company who was just murdered 2 weeks earlier for his political views. So just stop with the right wing, both sidesism. I have zero tolerance for it right now. Zero. I don't have tolerance for reporters who get in my face about it. I don't have tolerance for students who want to both sides it. I don't have tolerance for the press that wants to do this. Our people are getting shot. Okay? They're getting shot at and they're getting shot dead. And there is typically, unfortunately, a copycat effect after one of these things happens. So it actually really does matter that we're super honest about what the motivations are and what's driving political violence. That's what the Trump assassination attempts were, and that's what the Charlie assassination was. We have to be clear. Nutcase doing a nutcase thing is one thing, I admit. I get that. You can't just take some nutcase who's like crazy and saying crazy shit and clearly like schizophrenic and say, okay, I'm going to completely understand his motive. Like the guy who killed Irina in North Carolina. Yes, the guy mentioned her race in the midst of the attack. But if you look at that, if you zoom out on that guy's case, he was crazy. That case is at its heart is about a justice system that put him through a revolving door, even though they knew he was crazy and violent, and sicked him back on society. So that was it. But this, Charlie's assassination, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump that killed Corey Compatore, again, one of ours, killed. Those were political acts. We have to be honest. Why don't we know more about the shooter in the Trump Butler attempt? We do know a lot about Charlie's assassin. We already know a lot about this attempted ICE assassin. And the fact that he was a bad shot doesn't change what he was doing there. Here's one other thing I have to say. I am sick and tired of people bringing up Paul Pelosi and Melissa Hortman, the Speaker of the House out in Minnesota. I'm sick and tired of them bringing that up as examples of right-wing violence. Well, you know why? Because they weren't. They weren't. The guy who broke into the Pelosi's house was a leftist, lunatic, homeless man. His paraphernalia had BLM and LGBTQ pride flags all over it. This was not a right-winger. Just because he targeted somebody on the left doesn't make him a right-winger. In the case of Melissa Hortman, the shooter, the left-wing reporters missed this update, but it was reported by Alpha News and then others, including the New York Post, that guy actually completely disavowed any right-wing motivation and said the reason he did it was that Tim Walz, in his head, told him to go kill Democrat politicians in Minnesota. That's what he said. If you're looking for a motivation, that's what the guy himself said he did it for. But in any event, in neither of those cases, like you look at Melissa Hortman, you tell me, was all of society saying Melissa Hortman is a fascist? Melissa Hortman is a Nazi? No, it's a lie. Even the criticisms of Pelosi were like, she's an insider traitor. She's kind of horrible. It wasn't like she's a fascist who must be stopped, right? So this guy who went into the Melissa Hortman house was not driven by societal messages about her. He says he was driven by Tim Walz. Of course, this is a nut. Tim Walz did not tell him that. And then after Melissa Hortman was killed, there was universal condemnation. Universal condemnation. The right wasn't over here celebrating. Yay! She deserved it. She got what was coming to her. She was... The situations are completely inapposite to what we're seeing happening now to our people on the right. And I am infuriated by the left-wing refusal to acknowledge those basic facts.
There was no article in The Nation, the conservative equivalent of The Nation, after what happened to Melissa Hortman being like, well, she was pro-abortion. So, hey, Like that didn't happen. And it really is about, like, someone was challenging me about this on social media. So I went back and looked at Twitter to the best extent I could after what happened horribly to Melissa Hortman, and tried to see, what was this a widespread right-wing moment of levity and celebration? And of course it wasn't. There were a couple of examples, like
Mike Lee tweeted out some dopey tweets, Senator Mike Lee, which he deleted and took down.
Which he deleted. But see, this is such a great point, which he deleted. And the right does. After, for example, synagogue shootings or Unite the Right, there was so much hand-wringing internally at conservative groups and organizations. It's like the Richard Spencer example I just gave about what to do to keep alt-right freaks and neo-Nazi freaks away. That happened. The left is now coping in a way that they are preventing themselves from having that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Eliana. Thoughts?
I agree with Emily in that I think this is a serious societal problem, this rise of violence on the far left. And Megyn, you mentioned, you played a clip of mainstream media saying that the assailant in the ICE shooting, the family members say this person wasn't particularly political. And we know the assassin, Tyler Robinson, in the Charlie Kirk shooting became more political over the past couple of years. So both things can be true. And it's alarming that young men who weren't particularly political at one point became radicalized over a couple of years. People who weren't crazy became extremely political and committed these acts of violence. And it's alarming that politicians on the left aren't expressing concern about this. Instead, we see people like Ilhan Omar going on and saying, I don't grieve about this. Charlie Kirk's rhetoric was disgusting and pressed on it, on major news networks, can't bring themselves to say this was a tragedy and I'm alarmed by the rise of violence committed in the name of, stopping hate.
That's what Karen Attiah said too. I have no obligation to grieve him. I don't grieve him, among other things. Now she's suing. She says she's going to sue the Washington Post for firing her. She should have been fired when she liked the tweet that read, "This is what decolonization looks like," after 1,200 Israelis were murdered on 10/7/23. She celebrated it. She backed it with her liking of that tweet. She's done nothing other than that ever since. The things about Charlie Kirk were just her latest vile comments. It's a miracle she remained employed for the past 2 years after what she said after 10/7. So I have zero empathy for Karen Attiah. I look forward to her unemployment. Okay, where to go now? Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. The rhetoric that the left continues to put out with not a care for the environment we're in right now. When again, after an assassination, you are at peak risk for copycats. That's, I'm sorry to say it, but true. And I saw, Emily, you tweeted out yesterday that thing about 1968. And it was right on the money. Like the spate of assassinations that happened, it's no accident that we had so many, because people sadly get motivated when they see one of these things. They get the idea in their head in a way it wasn't prior to the despicable act. So we do need to be extra careful right now. And my leftist friends don't seem to understand that. I'll give you just a montage. Okay, let's start with that. It's happened post Charlie too, but here's a montage of Democrats on ICE in recent days and weeks. SOT 23.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets.
When you compare the old films of the Gestapo grabbing people off the streets of Poland, it does look like a Gestapo operation.
You posted on social media that, quote, ICE is acting like a terrorist force.
ICE agents, they are coming and kidnapping and disappearing people on the streets of the United States.
Masked agents of the state in unmarked vehicles are terrorizing communities. They are disappearing people.
One has to assume they're hiding something, or they're hiding misbehavior, because otherwise, why would they be wearing masks and denying their identities?
If everything is legitimate and proper, why are you wearing masks to hide your face?
Not look like America. We are going to require them to show
their faces. If you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't have anything to hide.
That was Eric Swalwell. Thank you, Western Lensman, for putting that together. Here's one more. This is from September 14th on MSNBC, Jasmine Crockett, SOT24.
But as somebody who understands history, when I see ICE, I see slave patrols. Now, I never lived through the slave patrol period, but if you know the history of policing in this country, then you understand that they were born out of slave patrols.
Here's another representative of the squad, Representative Jayapal of Washington in SOT 26. This is from July 4th.
Some of the most inspiring things have been when people encircle courtrooms and refuse to allow ICE agents in. There are all kinds of nonviolent resistance tactics that we have to use.
Here's a bit more from her the very same week, SOT 27.
Also, you posted on social media that, quote, ICE is acting like a terrorist force, and the White House told CNN that your, quote, disgusting comments warrant an immediate apology.
I think it is the administration that has to apologize to U.S. citizens that have been rounded up, to legal permanent residents, to people with legal statuses across the country who are getting swept up, people who have been here for 20 years and committed absolutely no crimes, getting swept up by masked men who are kidnapping them and deporting them. That, to me, is what is so outrageous. It's unconstitutional, it's illegal, and it is absolutely terrorizing people.
Terrorizing. I'm just going to give you one more. This is not specifically about ICE, but here's an example of the leftist rhetoric we're getting. I could do this all day on Chris Murphy, but here's just his latest. It was September 9th with Chuck Todd, SOT 29.
We are not going to convince Donald Trump to stand down in his attempts to destroy our democracy through de-escalatory politics. Like, that's just not happening. So our only opportunity, our only chance to save our democracy is to fight fire with fire right now. So, yeah, do I bemoan the fact that, we're now blowing up norms? Yes, but literally for 2 seconds, because if you spend any more than that being sorry for the fact that the old world doesn't exist, then your democracy is gone. Like, we're in a war right now to save this country, and so you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary in order to save the country.
Whatever's necessary. Nice. So can you speak to that, Emily, and the article you tweeted out too?
Yeah, this was, I went back and looked because I'm very interested in this question of contagion. I think we all are, because it does seem like these events, just anecdotally, it feels like they're always clustered around each other. And there is pretty good research going back to the 1960s about the contagion effect of political violence. The same thing exists when you're looking at school shootings. There's a pretty obvious contagion effect that people have studied in academic white papers for a long time. So it heightens the importance of being especially careful and responsible right now. By the way, that applies to Jimmy Kimmel, who's trying to pin a shooting on MAGA for, in a throwaway line in his monologue. It wasn't really a throwaway line, but the New York Times wrote about this in 1968 as the country felt the same thing that we're all feeling right now, which is that this seems like we're in the middle of a cluster phenomenon of people who are being inspired. And these, if you go into the depths of the internet, you do find people who lionize shooters, and these acts of heinous violence become memes. And you can see where sick, twisted, lonely, messed up individuals take this on as actually sort of a weird part of their nihilistic political ideology. And that's something people need to be extremely careful about when they're talking in the language of war, literally, as Chris Murphy just did. This is it's serious. And to immediately go, think about Jasmine Crockett here. This is or the Gestapo. Let's take the Gestapo claim. The Gestapo, as someone who knows about history, Jasmine Crockett should know, was responsible for rounding people up and putting them in concentration camps and death camps. Concentration camps and death camps. The Gestapo was doing that. There is no equivalence between the Gestapo in that sense, which is what most people recognize when they think of the Gestapo, and ICE. Secondly, there was actually a link between indentured servitude and arguably slavery and the border. And it was the millions of people who were being trafficked by the head, by cartels, to the border. And Jasmine Crockett did not give a damn for years about the mass trafficking that had people literally as indentured servitudes coming to the United States, having to repay the debts to cartels that let them basically take out on credit their own lives to come into the United States and repay them by trafficking drugs and other humans and all of that. That they had no concern about whatsoever.
So
now they want to get mad.
That's another thing driving me nuts right now. They caused this problem. This is all of their making. They opened up the southern border for some inexplicable reason, probably to get voters, but they didn't make it clear why they did it. They just violated the law, opened the border, and let some 10 to 20 million illegals, dangerous, many of them, flood in. All we're trying to do is get a tiny percentage of them out. We'd love for them all to go, but that's not possible. So we're trying to get some tiny percentage of them out. And that's the messaging we get. And now these ICE agents get shot at, which are within an inch of their lives, repeatedly targeted. And we've got to hear, we don't know what the motive is. Anti-ICE. No, we don't know. It's unclear. Right? So it's like they caused this. Eliana, can we spend a minute on... We had violence over the years, a mass shooting, et cetera. And every time the left would try to blame it on the right. You know, some crazy Ben Shapiro said X, you know, or like Ted Cruz, take your pick, said X. And the general response by the right was crazy people are out there. Sarah Palin, exactly. That was New York Times blaming her for the Gabby Gifford shooting. The general response from the right was always, there are crazy people out there, and you cannot attribute anyone's particular commentary as the reason a crazy person does a crazy thing. And I am generally sympathetic toward that. Like, you know, my mom spent her life working in mental health. I've heard a lot of stories about people who are genuinely disturbed and how difficult it is to get them better. However, I just think we're in a very different moment right now. Like I said, our people are actually being shot. Corey Carpenteri is dead because of a political assassin's bullet. Trump was shot in the ear as a result of that same guy, and almost shot again a couple weeks later on his golf course. Charlie is dead, and we all watched it happen. And I do think we're all suffering some PTSD on it. You know, I mean, I think everyone who's at all in the public eye is suffering a bit of PTSD, and probably a lot of our audience too, who aren't in the public eye, just about if you're openly conservative, if people know what your politics are, because it's our people that happen to be getting killed right now as political assassins take aim at us. And they write on their bullets the very same messages we're hearing all over MSNBC. So I feel like we have cause to object to the rhetoric. We have particular cause here. But I recognize the defenses that I'm hearing from the left is like, they're crazy and I'm allowed to say what I want to say. And no, I won't lower the temperature because we can't stand ICE. And we didn't like Charlie Kirk's political messages. So how do you make sense of it?
Well, look, I think you have to take these things on a case-by-case basis. There are real crazies who commit crimes. As you mentioned, the career criminal in North Carolina who committed that murder on a subway was mentally ill. And so to ascribe, to try to put ideology on that is difficult and I think misguided. However, the Charlie Kirk assassin was not crazy. We saw in those text messages rationality and rationale. He tried to cover up what he was doing. He had a plan. He had a plan of escape. He tried to protect his lover and cover his tracks and directed his lover to delete his text messages. All of this is extremely rational. And he said, point blank, some of this hatred cannot be tolerated. It has to be expunged. I'm paraphrasing here. But there are cases, obviously, in which you can ascribe clear motive, and that is one of them. And so I think it's important to distinguish between these two things. The Bernie Sanders acolyte who did the shooting on the congressional baseball field is another one. There are multiple of them. So not all of them are going to fall into this category, but many of them do.
I just feel like you can't tone it down now. Can you take like a couple weeks off of your most incendiary comments? Can you like just, you don't have to stop criticizing the right. Could you dial it down from an 11 while like, just until we have our dead buried, maybe? Like, just until like the immediate grieving period has passed? Is that possible? Just so we could like increase the odds of people on the right wing staying alive? But the reason they won't, Emily, is not principle. It's because they don't give a shit if we get shot.
The thing that's been driving me insane is just what you were saying right then. Like, let's just hypothetically assume that all of these studies are true, that the right is much more advanced. Like, let's just, like, wave our magic wand, hypothetically give them that. I don't think any of it's true. I think some of these studies are just disgraceful and shameful, and the media's laundering of them has been awful. But let's just give them that point. Are you still telling me, even if that's true, it is wildly inappropriate to immediately start pointing the finger, like Jimmy Kimmel, at MAGA as evidence starts stacking up against your own, someone being motivated by anti-conservative, anti-right ideology? And there's like macro blame and micro blame. And I blame the person who pulls the trigger and the people who are complicit in the pulling of the trigger. Macro blame is also a valid conversation. And they have been utterly unwilling since, I would say, the first like 6 hours after what happened to Charlie Kirk, utterly unwilling in the case of what happened in Minnesota. And we saw earlier what happened in Nashville that the Biden administration tried to cover up. They have been utterly unwilling in the aftermath of any of these tragedies to shoulder any serious burden of how their own rhetoric might be responsible in the macro sense. They have deflected all of it. And it's like, again, even if, let's just say they're right. They're not, but let's say they are about right-wing violence. How disgusting is it if you're Jimmy Kimmel to only cry after you get in trouble and to not be in mourning like immediately for the, like this? I think they've just totally underestimated how traumatic what happened to Charlie Kirk was for the country. And they got back to like yucking it up pretty quickly and pointing the finger. And that is insane and it sucks. And I think it's exposed some really like bad people as just bad people.
I totally agree. Oh, well said. All right, ladies, I got to go because I have a segment I'm going to do by myself that you don't need to stick around for, but I love talking to you, and thank you so much for being here. Eliana, hang in there.
Thank you, Megyn.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you again soon. When you are buried in credit card and loan debt, it's human nature to put it off and say, I'm going to deal with that later. Don't want to touch that right now. If that's you, here's something you need to know. Done with Debt discovered a little-known strategy that works in your favor to dramatically reduce or even erase your debt altogether. They can aggressively engage everyone you owe money to in September, and here's why. They know which lenders and credit card companies are doing year-end accounting and need to cut deals. They even know which ones have year-end audits and need to get your debt off of their books. So consider getting started with Done with Debt right now, this fall. Done with Debt accomplishes this without bankruptcy or new loans. In fact, most clients end up with more money in their pocket the first month. Get started now while you still have time. Go to donewithdebt.com and speak with one of their specialists for free. Visit donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Did you know all chips and fries used to be cooked in tallow up until the 1990s when big corporations switched to cheap processed seed oils? Today, seed oils make up 20% of the average American's daily calories. And recent studies have linked seed oils to metabolic health issues and inflammation in the body. Masa decided to do something about it. They created a tasty and delicious tortilla chip with just 3 ingredients and no seed oils: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. These chips do not only avoid all the bad stuff, they taste incredible too. Masa's crunchier, tastier, and sturdier than other chips. The beef tallow makes the chips much more satiating, and so you will not find yourself uncontrollably binging and then still feeling hungry afterward like with regular chips. They've got great flavors too. Lime, delicious, churro. They got the white corn. I'm into it. Ready to give Masa a try? Go to masachips.com/MK and use the code MK for 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com/MK. Use that code MK to get 25% off your first order. Okay, I wanted to talk to you about one specific thing before we go, and it's very annoying. As you may know, there is a campaign with which I've had almost nothing to do on Charlie Kirk's feelings about Israel before he was killed. We did one segment on this show last Wednesday with the guys from Fifth Column where I played 4 minutes of an exchange that Charlie and I had on August 6th about that very subject, because as far as I know, I'm one of the only ones who actually has Charlie on tape talking about that a month before he was killed. And so my position is you don't have to wonder how Charlie was feeling about the situation with Israel. Here he is on camera telling you. So that is why I ran that segment. And I explained to the audience the reason that I was doing it is because there was a lot of talk about Charlie and Israel. Candace Owens had brought it up and others had brought it up. And she had reporting about a meeting with Bill Ackman, allegedly putting pressure on Charlie to be more pro-Israel right after his Turning Point event. I've heard that same reporting from others, but I wasn't weighing in on that one way or the other. I wasn't there and I didn't have my own sourcing on that. I was just trying to say, if this is in the news right now, I've got him. Most people didn't even know we did that interview. A lot of people listen to the show, but not everybody. So here it is. Let me play this for you in his own words. And in that exchange, you can go back and listen to it. We replayed it again last Wednesday. But the sum and substance of it was Charlie was saying he did feel unfairly attacked by some who are pro-Israel for mild criticism he'd been offering as of late about Israel. He didn't like it. He didn't like being called an anti-Semite. He felt he had earned the benefit of the doubt with the pro-Israel crowd because he's been very ardently pro-Israel. And I was expressing my own similar feelings because I felt like I was in the same boat. I've said almost nothing about Israel. Literally, I've said almost nothing. But I was also getting very weird pushback. When I was on with Tucker recently, he mentioned this, and I'll just read it to you. This was an article that was put out by the American Jewish Committee. They purport to stand for the rights of American Jews across the world. And this was after Charlie's event, at which I said nothing about Israel. It was at the Turning Point event. We were talking all about Epstein. And he said, do you think he's intel? And I said, it seems like he was some sort of an asset being used as intel. Probably Mossad, that was my guess, since Ehud Barak had been spending the nights in Jeffrey Epstein's home. It seemed like he was very close with Israelis and their leaders. And there's an Israeli guy who specifically said Epstein was Mossad. He was a Mossad asset and that this guy was his handler. I had an argument about this with Ben Shapiro. So look, I wasn't saying for sure. I was saying he could be ours, could be theirs. That's it. That's literally it. And this American Jewish Committee puts out the following. Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly floated the baseless conspiracy theory that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent and admitted that they had no evidence. That doesn't matter because what people will remember is the lie. This isn't just irresponsible. It's a textbook example of how right-wing anti-Semitism spreads through conspiracies dressed up as innocent speculation. They gave oxygen to an age-old trope of Jewish control, and in today's climate, that's not just offensive, it's dangerous. So strongly object to that. I'm sorry that there are tropes about Jews. I've been fighting against them for years. It's bullshit. I hate anti-Semitism. I've seen what my Jewish friends have gone through over the past 2 years. So they have to worry about getting killed when they go to temple. It's absurd. It's terrible what's happened on college campuses, the tearing down of the hostage posters. I mean, I've been at the forefront in criticizing it. But to say that in speculating about why Jeffrey Epstein got away with so much, maybe he was intel. And I didn't just say about Israel. It was like, I don't know whose he was. Mossad could make sense. We could make sense. That's crazy talk. You can't have every speculation about Israel or mild criticism of Israel turn into anti-Semitism. All along, people have been saying, the Israeli defenders, you can criticize Israel, just don't be anti-Semitic. Well, don't try to take a criticism of Israel and make it anti-Semitism because it upsets people who love our Jewish friends and love Israel. Just stop. So Charlie was offended. He didn't like it, and I didn't like it. And now enter this jerk, Abe Greenwald. He is a commentator. He's an executive editor of Commentary magazine. And he decided to attack me. And he came out last Wednesday after our show with the Fifth Column guys. in which I made very clear, of course, I am not playing this soundbite from Charlie because I think Israel had any relevance whatsoever when it comes to Charlie's assassination. As you know, I'm really clear on who killed Charlie. I believe that it was this trans guy. Well, guy dating the trans guy. And the Fifth Column and I had the following exchange around that Charlie soundbite and around some of the reporting about the Bill Ackman meeting, again, which I took no position on. I wasn't there. Watch this. It's Hot 49.
I wonder why, before Charlie Kirk had been buried, the number of people that were talking about Israel. That's the thing that concerns me about why this is coming up. Why is it about the pet issue that she's been talking about, I think, obsessively for every time I tune in to, like, in these totally crazy ways? I mean, the guy Ian
Well, I don't know if
Carroll,
this is true of Candace.
Well,
but
I
obviously
think it
some
is,
people,
by the way.
no, but I was just going to say, but some people obviously were wondering whether Israel had a hand in this. I mean, that's clearly why it's come up, and there's zero evidence of that. And there's zero evidence of that, is what I said. Then I went on Tucker's show, his live show that Wednesday night, and said exactly the same thing. Zero evidence. I said, I don't believe, and I know you don't believe, that Israel had anything to do with Charlie's murder. But we talked about that same strain of, like, why is there so much pressure against people who say other things about Israel that are not flattering? Yes, Tucker's gotten more and more critical of Israel. Separate now out the Charlie thing. He's gotten very critical of Israel because he is worried about what's happening to Christians over there. And he's very worried that the United States is going to get pulled into that war like we almost were when they launched a side war against Iran. He's entitled to say that. And when I went on Tucker's show, he and I talked about, like, the level of pressure on Charlie and on me to, like, cancel our friends, to stop talking to Tucker. Charlie, I respect Candace. I don't know her personally, but I'm dear friends with Tucker. But I've certainly had pressure to completely cut ties with Tucker. And I know Charlie had pressure to completely cut ties with Candace. And by the way, Charlie spoke to that too. So I'm going to show you part of my discussion with Tucker, and then I'll get to the message from Abe Greenwald. Watch this. And I just want to add, as a period to this, as a footnote, I guess, to this, Tucker, you have a lot of it too. And it is the reason why Charlie is not the only one who's been threatened or was threatened to cut ties with you or not platform you. I too have gotten that, especially since you've been more outspoken on Israel. And I couldn't care less the amount of pressure they put on. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. This is madness. Why would you want to silence such a powerful, important voice just because you disagree with them on one subject, one on which we've all watched you sincerely evolve as you grapple with principles you've been espousing for years, like America First, like what's happening to Christians, like what's best for us and our kids here? How do I keep them safe? That's my number one priority. And I've been just absolutely disgusted and recoiled from people who have tried to pressure me on it. It, of course, never happened. But I know from speaking to Charlie, he felt it too. You've heard it from Charlie that he felt, and there is a layer here of nefarious pressure to have certain narratives go only one way.
Yes.
That must be called out and must be fought. And let's face it, Charlie was like an unofficial spokesperson for the youth of America, in particular conservative youth. And I don't know if people have checked, but they no longer support Israel. And everybody under 30 is against Israel. Charlie was 31. And so as a friend, he's saying to them, and the same way I, as a friend, am saying, I am telling you, you've lost Dems, independents, and you're starting to lose Republicans. You need to wrap it up. You've had a 2-year long leash. I know you want your hostages back, but this cannot go on until you have every hostage back. It's just not going to, you're going to lose every friend you have. And that's what he was saying because that's what he was hearing from his constituency. I, like you, have zero belief that this had anything to do with his death. Okay, so I think it's pretty clear. Before I get to Abe Greenwald, Mark Levin, to whom I've always been very nice, very kind. I have had no problem with Mark Levin. I see him arguing with everybody online. It's not my fight. He tweets out that segment, a piece of it, where I said everybody under 30 is against Israel, with Tucker, and says, such disgusting bullshit, sick and getting sicker. They continue to reveal themselves. What is he talking about? It's not disgusting bullshit. There was an article in the New York Post just the other day. More than 60% of American Gen Z supports Hamas over Israel. Gallup just released a poll, days ago. Only about 1 in 10 adults under the age of 35 say they approve of Israel's military choices in Gaza. 1 in 10 adults under age 35. What I said was exactly right, entirely accurate. There is no cause for Mark Levin to be attacking me or Tucker over that discussion. He's out of line. People have been asking me to name names, like, who's attacking you? Because I said, but you get attacked if you... I'm going to name some names here. Mark Levin is one of them. Shame on him. He, like Charlie felt, you get no credit for being an open supporter of Israel. How many times can I say I am? Like, how many discussions have we had on this show? You guys know this. This is really gross, and I object to it, same as Charlie did. So now enter this guy, Abe Greenwald. So, by the way, on the subject of Commentary Magazine and Commentary's podcast with John Podhoretz as the main host, who I love. I think John Podhoretz is one of the most brilliant people we have. I really have admired him. I love Christine, who's on that show. Noah Rothman used to be on that show. Matt Continetti, brilliant. Like, these are guys I've listened to for years. And Abe Greenwald's on that podcast as well, who I've also enjoyed. They've been on this podcast. I had them over after 10-7. So I was shocked to receive this message. And I promoted that podcast. You may recall me mentioning that multiple times in the show. Abe Greenwald DMs me on X last Wednesday, September 17th. Keep going with the Candace theory. I think you got a real winner there. I'm sure you'll be vindicated. Stellar work. So he's being a sarcastic asshole. And I couldn't believe it. Like, what Candace theory? Candace has got her theory. Take it up with her if you don't like what she's saying. I distinctly said my own thing, which was not to endorse anything in particular about Candace other than to say, I do know how Charlie felt, and here it is. Play. So I finally got around to responding yesterday and wrote, I actually can't believe you're sending me hate mail as I'm grieving a dear friend getting his neck blown out before my very eyes, which you fucking know. I never endorsed any Candace theory. You're such a douche. And I have to pat myself on the back because that's exactly how I was feeling, and I said it with exactly the words I wanted to say it. And he responded today, I'm greatly moved by your grief. And what's more, awed by the strength it must have taken, given your state, to amplify the paranoid conspiracy theory of a well-known lunatic Jew hater. So this is what we're dealing with. How, pray tell, am I supposed to deal with somebody like this, who proceeds in the absolute worst faith, who gives you 0 chips in the bank for being an ardent defender of Israel and American Jewish people going through what they've been going through? And this is one of the leading voices, one of the leading Jewish voices in America. And he seems pretty aligned with what the American Jewish Committee said. It's disgusting. And I have to tell you, it's undermining the very cause that he's hoping to promote. Like, this is not the way you treat your friends. Know the difference between a friend and an enemy. Israel and those who support it, they have enough enemies without making one out of somebody who loves them. And one other thing on the subject of pressure to abandon your friends, which it's never going to happen. Okay, just stop. Nobody should be leaning on me to abandon my friendship with Tucker, to not platform Tucker. And it's not just Tucker. I get this about Glenn Greenwald too. It's just stop. That's not ever going to happen. I don't believe their ideas are so vile that they cannot be platformed here. I'm interested in what they have to say. I may disagree with them. That's fine. They're my friends. I'm very interested in their opinions, and I always find them respectfully expressed. I mean, Glenn has a lot of really, ways into the Israel conflict that I don't get to hear that often, since I am such a supporter, and I would like to open my mind to what the side that's more critical of Israel is saying. And Tucker has a totally different, angle on the story, which I also find interesting. I may agree with it, I may not, but I don't get this, shut down your ears, do not listen, treat them like a pariah. That's crazy talk to me. And I happen to know that Charlie felt exactly the same, and the reason I happen to know it is because he said it on camera not long before he was killed at one of his events, where he was asked about his dear friend Candace Owens.
How is your relationship with Candace Owens nowadays?
She's a great friend. Look, I don't agree with everything Candace says, but you know what I don't do? I don't stop being friends with people just because people morally blackmail me. I don't do that, and you shouldn't either. Look, I have different views on things as Candace. I have different views on Israel than Candace. I have different views on a lot of geopolitics. But honestly, I traveled the country with Candace. I went to her wedding. I saw her meet her husband. I went to Israel with Candace, which is a fun story I'll tell you at some point. But what I don't like is when people demand, you must stop being friends with somebody. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a left-wing tactic. Don't do that. I'm not saying you do that, but other people do that. We should never resort to that. In fact, if you believe what I believe, shouldn't you want me to be friends with people that don't agree with us? Shouldn't you want me to also be a tool of influence? And so I think the world of Candace. She's a great mother. She certainly has very, very fun opinions at times. And she's a great talent. She says a lot of stuff that sometimes I don't agree with, but that's what makes our relationship and our friendship interesting. My advice to all of you, you might not like somebody, but never tell somebody like me to stop being friends with somebody on an interpersonal level just because of disagreement. It's bad. It's what the left does, and we should rise above it as conservatives. Thank you so much.
So it's very irritating. And I really, this is not true of all Jewish people or even their, loudest spokespeople. I've never gotten this kind of grief from John Podhoretz, again, who's also on that podcast. There's something wrong with this guy, Abe, obviously. But I urge my Jewish friends not to go there, not to do this shit. I don't think any speculation about Israel belongs in the Charlie Kirk discussion. I set the record straight by playing his 4-minute clip. But I also think criticism of Israel on a standalone subject is entirely fair game. Charlie felt it. I feel it. And I've just had it. I've had it up to here with the Mark Levins and Abe Greenwalds of the world. So that's that. Thank you all for joining me today. And tomorrow we're going to be thrilled to bring you the one and only Nerve host, Maureen Callahan. We're looking forward to that. See you then.